What's up, everybody? It is 9 a.m. in the Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, and this is week 2 of the college football season. We're going to go live here now and talk about, kind of recap everything. Just kind of give my opinion on some things, see if you agree with them, and move forward looking into next week, week 3. So, I know as people come on, you can always restart these live streams, watch them from the beginning, or you can jump in right where you're at and check them out, restart them after it's over. It will be uploaded once the video's over with. It will upload itself to YouTube. So with that said, let's jump right in. So I would like to start off this week with kind of a stock report on these teams and give a stock up on some teams, stock down on teams. And the first group is the stock up. I think that there's 4 teams that I picked out that, to me, over the previous 2 weeks, over this week, in combination with some of them from the first week, kind of kept rising, and one that kind of bounced back. So the first one is Texas A&M. I think that a lot of people were high on them after that first game. I kind of held off because I thought, you know, them playing Northwestern State out of Louisiana the first week really didn't show anything. It was a good warm up for them. But now last night they did play Clemson pretty tough. I know that game being in College Station was a lot different than if it had been played in Death Valley in South Carolina. But either way, they played good at home. They had a chance to get it done at the end, come up a little short. But overall, they really played this team tough. I think that Kellen Mond is really fitting this system that Jimbo runs very well. He's picking up on it quick, a lot better than I actually expected. I didn't have a lot of hope for this team. I think in the preseason I had them going 6-6 or 7-5, and even with a loss yesterday, they're 1-1. But at the same time, they're playing a lot above what I had them. I thought it would take at least another year for Jimbo to get this in place. Of course, in Texas, especially that area of Texas, you have a ton of recruiting. So they had players, they had plenty of talent to run the system. I didn't know if they could do it so quickly. Next up, Georgia. That's the easy one. Georgia, of course, we knew we were going to be very well. I thought this game was going to be a little bit closer. In the preseason video I talked about, I thought this game would be their toughest of the year, simply because they lost so much on defense last year. I thought that this was a good spot for South Carolina. I didn't think South Carolina could win the game. I thought Georgia would win, but I didn't think Georgia would win the way they did yesterday. They came out. I didn't get to watch it. I actually got to go to the game yesterday for Alabama, and just kind of didn't get to see a lot of this. Kept up with a bunch of it on my phone, watched some highlights, read some articles, and that's kind of where I'm at today. But overall, Georgia took care of business. They pretty much shut down South Carolina. Carolina only put up 10 points for most of the game, scored a late touchdown there to make it 17. And Georgia takes care of business 41-17. Arizona State is a team that I feel like is playing above their head. Now, this team is, even though I've got it in the stock up report, I think eventually they're going to come down. They are. I had this team on the money line play, the degenerate money line play from the week, and 1-1 with those. Actually having a little luck with those, having a little fun with them. And I don't know. I knew that was going to be a long shot, but that heat out there, you had to know that was going to get to Michigan State a little bit. For both teams, that would have been tough to play in. But if you take one of them that's used to it a little bit more, it does definitely benefit that team. Now, that quarterback for Arizona State is not bad. This guy is, he's really good, and he's proven it so far. And then the last team is really based off of this week. And from week 1 to week 2, I talked about overreactions and don't let some of these teams fool you as much as possible. And Penn State is one of those. They came out, they obviously were overlooking App State and looking towards Pitt and the rest of their schedule. Played App State really tough the first week, and took overtime to win that game. Came out this week and took care of business of Pitt on the road. Beat Pitt 51-6. So they took care of business. Now, that game was a lot closer the first half than it was in the second half, but Penn State really pulled away, started getting some rhythm, started playing a lot better football, and won that game ultimately pretty big. So that's all the stock up. Now we'll talk about the stock down. Um, Number one is a big miss on my part, and that is Florida. Florida, I really felt like would use this as a statement game, as a builder for them, and they didn't. They completely laid an egg, couldn't do anything against Kentucky. Kentucky came in here with 31 straight years they've lost to Florida. Took care of business and won it in the Swamp. So that's huge for Kentucky. They actually looked a lot better than I gave them credit. So probably need to put them on the stock up report. But either way, Kentucky needs to still clean up some turnovers. If they clean up a few turnovers, this game would have even been worse than what it was. Arkansas is the next team on the stock down. To go out the first week, Arkansas against, I believe it was Southern Illinois, maybe Eastern Illinois, something like that, a little small school, actually had less yards than the team they were playing. This week they go out to Colorado State, who has not looked good at all, who has lost to Hawaii, which is not a bad team, and has lost to Colorado, which is definitely not a bad team. We'll talk about them later. But still, 0-2. Arkansas goes out, has an 18-point lead in the second half, and blows that lead to lose by a touchdown to Colorado State. Next up, Arizona. This is an easy one. I would thought going into the season that with this quarterback, Khalil Tate, that they would fit really well. This coaching style, this scheme would fit him really well, and it just hasn't. This is I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if it's the coaches not unleashing him enough. I don't know if it's just teams have had plenty of time to prepare for him, or if he may be, holding back himself, trying to, preserve himself from the NFL. I don't know. But in either case, he's not playing up to the standards that he was, everybody thought he would come to the season. And they're now 0-2. And yesterday, they got blown out. Houston blew them out. And yes, it was in Houston. Yes, it's hot. Yes, it's, traveling, whatever. You don't get blown out like that. A good team doesn't get blown out like that on the road to a AAC team. North Carolina's next. They lost to ECU yesterday. North Carolina, to me, actually looked decent in week one. They had a lot of turnovers, which was a problem they needed to fix, but they stayed in it with Cal. And then they come into yesterday. ECU had lost to an FCS team the week one and just took care of North Carolina yesterday. North Carolina couldn't do anything to stop them. And then finally, I have Florida State. Now, Florida State, yeah, they came out, and I had Virginia Tech last week. I like Virginia Tech this year a lot. And so that one didn't necessarily surprise me. That's not a brag or anything. That's just, I had, was big on Virginia Tech, so I was hoping that would happen. This week did surprise me. When you're down halfway through the fourth to Sanford at home, you got problems. So that team's got to figure some things out and get it on track pretty quickly. As far as notes yesterday, a couple things that stood out to me. One, Kansas got their first road win in like 4 years or something. It was something crazy like that. I don't know the exact stat, but they did take care of that. Central Michigan got a road win and won big, 31-7. So big win there. If you watch Game Day on Saturday mornings, Chris Felica, the Bear, he actually called that game. He said that Kansas would get an outright win here and break that streak, and he nailed it. They were a 4-point underdog going in that game, and they won. Also, the game I got to go to, I don't know what it is about the University of Alabama, but we cannot get a kicker to save our lives. If we have a game that comes down to it, we are screwed. And that was present last year. It's been present for years now under Saban. We just cannot get a kicker to do anything. Last year we would have won the national championship in regulation if we could just hit that easy chip shot field goal. Couldn't do it. This year, we come into this game in the first two games he's missed 3 extra points. That is absolutely unacceptable for a fifth-year senior who transferred in from Temple. This is just it's laughable, honestly. So y'all keep a watch out for that. You can laugh with us, I guess, if you're watching the Alabama game. As far as the league yesterday, as far as the entire power, Division One Power Five schools, you guys know that I only pay attention to the Power Five conferences. It's easier to keep up with stats and project things like that. But either way, let's go over those now. We'll start with the SEC. So yesterday, Alabama did get the win. They did look very good. They just can't hit a field goal for whatever reason. They do win this thing 57-7. Last night, we talked about the A&M game. A&M held that game close. It finished up 28-26 against Clemson. Talked about the Georgia-South Carolina game. Georgia gets that 41-17 victory. That's huge for them on the road, winning big against an East team. So obviously they've got, a lot of people were very high on South Carolina this year. I wasn't as high on South Carolina. I had them finishing fourth, but I also was higher on Florida. So I definitely, got one, lost one there yesterday, I guess you could say. As far as Auburn yesterday, gets a big win against Alabama State. No big surprise there. Auburn put up double digits in 3 of the 4 quarters. Win that thing 63-9. LSU yesterday shuts out Southeastern Louisiana. I don't even know where Southeastern Louisiana, what town that's in. But either way, LSU gets the win 31-0. Mississippi State yesterday, that was the win we had. As far as the plays I gave out on Wednesday, I had them at 9.5. The line actually went down to 7 before the kickoff, so you actually would have got a better line by waiting in that game. They take care of business, win it by 3 touchdowns, 31-10. So Mississippi State, and it did go exactly how I thought it would, and that is that the defense and offensive lines for Mississippi State are stronger than Kansas State. You could just look out there, even every play they lined up, the offensive line for Kansas State lined up against the defensive line for Mississippi State, you could just tell the difference right then, just in lining up on the field, not even before the play starts, just when they would get in their stance, it looked right opposite. You would think that it would be the offensive line out there for Mississippi State, and it wasn't. It was their defensive line. They over the game, it started out very close, and as the game progressed on, those two groups took over and really got the win for Mississippi State. Of course, we talked about the big upset with Kentucky over Florida. Vanderbilt looked good yesterday. A lot of people were taking Nevada yesterday because they had put up like 77 points on somebody, Portland State or somebody, the week 1. I can't remember who they played. They come into Nashville yesterday, and Vanderbilt put up 41 on them, win that game 41-10. Ole Miss struggled for most of this game. I say most, more like first half, part of the third quarter. They come out and really started putting it on and ended up covering the spread. They were 28-point favorite over Southern Illinois. And like I said, we're down close to halftime. We're close either way, even if they weren't down. I can't remember exactly. But come out in the second half and really start putting it together and won this thing 76-41. So they got a big matchup coming up this next week, which we'll get into later. Tennessee and Eastern Tennessee. Tennessee came out, got them a little, I guess they got them a 59-3 win, which should give them a little bit of momentum heading into the rest of the season. But really, what did you expect there? Missouri took care of business over Wyoming. This Wyoming team, I know they're 1-2 now, and I know that they lost last week to Washington State, but this team is not bad. And the fact that Missouri put up 40 on them, beat them 40-13, that's a good win for Missouri in my book. I think that's a solid home victory. They scored in every quarter, and I know if you've watched me on these, I call that out a lot because that's a big deal to me. If a team puts up points in every quarter, it's not necessarily, in my opinion, it's not like they beat them down, wore them down, and had to win it off of conditioning or, they had some fluke scores in one quarter. If you put up points in every quarter, that to me means that you're moving the ball, you're stopping the other team to get more chances. It's an overall good win in my book for the entire game. Excuse me, starting to get a little dry throat. Colorado State yesterday upsets Arkansas. Arkansas comes in this game. Arkansas had that huge lead, which we talked about in the first video, and just blew it. Blew it in the fourth quarter. Gave up 17 points in the fourth quarter to Colorado State, who before this game was 0-2. Like I said, that's unacceptable. Just not a good showing for Arkansas. I think the SEC as a whole had a little bit of a overreaction to that, because they did play so well last week, only having one team lose last week. Everybody kind of overreacted to the SEC. Some of the teams that should have been, or top of the conference, I guess you could say, teams came in, took care of business. Some of them did not this week. But overall, I think the SEC had a little bit of a letdown week this time. Next up, we got the Pac-12. UCLA goes out to Oklahoma and just gets obliterated by 28. That line, at first, I seen it early in the week, maybe last Sunday, around 28, so they nailed it. They lost by 28. It did push up all the way to 30, so that's obviously a lot of money put on Oklahoma, which sounds like it made the casinos a lot of money off of this one, off the sports books. Washington takes care of business of North Dakota, 45-3. No big deal there. Stanford has a big win against USC, 17-3. Stanford coming in this game started out as a 3.5 point favorite, went all the way up. I think it got all the way to 6. So this was a lot of money coming in on Stanford, and for good reason. They shut that freshman quarterback for USC down yesterday. Stanford scored in 3 of the 4 quarters and took care of business. They went into halftime up 14-0 and come out. There was only 2 field goals in the second half, 1 for each team, and they get the 17-3 victory. Next up, we have Arizona State, who was that degenerate money line play. Thankfully, they come through for 16-13. They were down 13-6 in the fourth quarter. Actually down 13-3 going into the fourth quarter, and put up 13 points in that fourth quarter alone to win it 16-13. So, first off, when's the last time you've seen, Arizona State be in a game that finished up 16-13? And then second, they get the win over Michigan State. Like I said earlier, I feel like probably they wore Michigan State down a little bit just simply because of that heat. Nothing that Arizona State necessarily did, but just kept wearing them down and had a big fourth quarter to win that thing 16-13. And that game did go into the halftime at 3-0 Michigan State. So that is a little bit crazy of a score, in my opinion, for Arizona State game. Oregon takes care of Portland State 62-14. Scored in all 4 quarters against a very weak team. Portland State's 0-2. FCS, not a big win there in my book. Houston, we talked about taking care of Arizona 45-18. Colorado comes in with a big win. Now, Nebraska didn't get to play last week. Nebraska also lost their quarterback yesterday during the game. Their starter, that freshman they have starting for them. But either way, Colorado scores all 4 quarters, comes in and scores a late touchdown to win this thing 33-28. Big win there. As far as I'm concerned, Colorado's 2-0, and everybody was high on Nebraska. It's Scott Frost's first game because he didn't get to play last week, or they didn't get to play last week. And Colorado comes in there and takes care of business. Utah does beat Northern Illinois. Now that game was at NIU, so that is a little one of those scheduling, things where they had to travel. They were down until the third quarter where they scored a touchdown, went up 7-3, and then scored 10 in the fourth to cover that game. When I seen it, it was around 10.5. Earlier in the week, I think it actually went down to 9 or 9.5. And so they did cover. They won it by 11, 17-6. Oregon State gets a win yesterday against Southern Utah. Obviously not a big team there in Southern Utah, but Oregon State getting a win against anybody is a big deal for them. Cal takes care of BYU. It's a close game, but did get the win there, 21-18. That was a BYU was favored in this game by 3, at least a field goal, maybe 3.5. And Cal took care of business there. They got the win. Tanner Mangum, if I'm saying that right, I always mess up people's names, and I apologize. But for BYU, the quarterback, this has got to be his 24th year there. I think he's about to turn 48 years old, but he is still the starting quarterback at BYU. Actually had a decent day yesterday. Didn't have any turnovers, but Cal did take care of business and got that win. And then finally in the Pac-12, we had Washington State get a big win against San Jose State, 31-0. I don't think San Jose State is the team that they were last year or even the previous few years. Of course, that is a team that is sneaky. Hey, what's up, Sports Fury? That is a team that is sneaky good in past years against, non-conference games. They hadn't necessarily upset anybody, but they kind of kept it a lot closer than what they should. But Washington State shuts them out yesterday, 31-0. So that finished up the Pac-12. Move on to the Big Ten now. Now this was a game, this very first game early, or I think it was a 2:30, 3:30 game. Ohio State Rutgers. This was one of the ones I gave out. I took the over, and Ohio State did their part. They scored 35 in the first half of the game. We just needed Rutgers to come out and do anything. They come out and put a field goal up in the third quarter. Thought things were going to get going. Ohio State really took their foot off the pedal and, slowed up there and only ended up putting 17 up in the second half. And because of that, only 55 scored. We missed it. We had over 63.5. If they could have done anything that second half, Rutgers really what I had hoped going into that game was Rutgers would score a touchdown in the first half. And I know what you're thinking, even 35-7, that would not have been a big deal. It actually, only being up 4 touchdowns, I don't think Ohio State would have took their foot off the gas. I think they would have come out and really come down and scored some more points quickly and as fast as possible. And if Rutgers could have done that and maybe the 3 in the second half, I really think we would have had this victory. So, but them not doing anything in that first half, they just couldn't get anything going at all. It just really shut them down and allowed Ohio State to get a comfortable lead and just sit on that lead and not really do anything else. Wisconsin yesterday was behind there for a little while. At the end of the first quarter, they were down 7-3 to New Mexico. Wisconsin comes out and finally turns on Jonathan Taylor, and he absolutely exploded after that point. They win the game 45-14. Penn State was a big game last night against Pitt. This is a traditional rivalry game. It goes back a long time. I talked about this in the stock up report as far as Penn State being kind of an overreaction from them from week 1, and they sure enough showed it. They scored at halftime. It was 14-6. They come out in the second half. They end up winning this thing 51-6. So definitely turned it on in that second half and made Pitt pay for it. And so, this game may have been a lot closer if Penn State would have had a better game last week. If they'd have played a lot better, this game would have been a lot closer. Now, there was some money come in on Pitt on this game, and I think it opened up around 9.5, and I think it got all the way down to 7.5 at least is where I've seen it. It may have even got even closer down to 7, maybe 6.5, something like that. We've already talked about Michigan State, Arizona State. Michigan had a big win yesterday. Even though it was over Western Michigan, it was good to see them bounce back. They win the game 49-3, scored in all 4 quarters there, and really got Shea Patterson going a little bit. He was 12 of 17, which is not, I know that's not throwing the ball a ton. Obviously in a game like this, you're going to run the ball, try to run the clock, and still get a big win. But he did throw for 125 yards. Biggest thing is he threw for 3 touchdowns. So obviously they wasn't throwing the ball a lot. I know it's not a ton of yards, it's not a ton of completions, but 12 of 17, pretty good day. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Maybe got him a little bit of confidence moving forward into the next few weeks. Karan Higdon, the running back from Michigan, had a big day. He had 156 yards on 13 carries. So obviously the starters started coming out of this game pretty quick. Duke and Northwestern, I think this was an upset for a lot of people. Duke scored all 21 of their points in the second quarter. really the first half was all the scoring. It absolutely was. Northwestern scored 7 in the first quarter. Second quarter, Duke comes out, scores 3 touchdowns, and that's where the game finished 21-7. This game had Northwestern as a favorite. Started out around 3.5 or 4. It did come down. Duke did have some money coming in on them. In fact, I think it got all the way to 2.5, and then it bounced back up to 3. That means that, some people were on the buyback once it got under that key number of 3, which in college, key numbers are not a huge thing like they are in the NFL, but are still important in my opinion. And in a game like this, the Bear actually gave out another big stat yesterday on Duke. He took Duke plus the 2.5, and he gave the stat out. And I can't remember the exact number, but it was overwhelming. It was like 8-1 as far as Cutcliffe at Duke being a favorite of less than 3 points. So obviously that's a strong trend, and that stayed alive yesterday. So things like that is stuff that I like to pay attention to. And this guy, Chris Felica, if you're not following him on Twitter, you probably need to. He gives out a lot of good information like that during the week. Purdue yesterday was a big letdown. They lose to Eastern Michigan, which is, Eastern Michigan is 2-0, but that's not a team you should lose to. I believe that was around a 16.5 point favorite, and that game actually did get pushed up almost to 20. So I know that, Purdue backers definitely lost some money on this game yesterday. They did lose the game 20-19, so lose by a point at home against a team that they should not have lost to. We've talked about the Colorado-Nebraska game. Next up, we have another rivalry game here, Iowa State and Iowa. Iowa State jumped out to a 3-0 lead, held that for most of the first half. Iowa ties it up. They go into halftime 3-3. That's a really good defensive rivalry here. Iowa took care of business in the second half, scoring another 10 points and winning this game 13-3. So a long time that, Iowa was favored around 4 points, and Iowa State actually was just like Nebraska last week. They didn't get to play, so we didn't really know what we would have out of Iowa State, but they held it close for a while and just couldn't get it going the rest of the way. Lose that game 13-3. Maryland got another big win yesterday over Bowling Green, so we know Bowling Green is nothing special, but Maryland is 2-0. They're building that confidence. They upset Texas last week. It's possible that they get it going even further into the season. You never know on a team like that. They've got something to play for. They're playing with some heavy hearts this season, losing their teammate like that, and it's giving them momentum. And they were also coming in the season, they were a little bit better than I gave them credit for, just on talent-wise. And Matt Canada, even though he didn't do so well last year at LSU, he's a pretty good play caller, and he proved that before he got the LSU job. That was a move up. It didn't work out there last year, and him and Coach O split ways there at the end of the season. And it's definitely working out for Matt Canada now, because he's back up in the Northeast area, and I guess that's where he's more comfortable at, and he's doing well there so far this season. Virginia and Indiana, this was a game that was, this was very even teams. I thought this would be a good game to watch, and it ended up being a very good game. Virginia loses this game on the road 16-20. Indiana picks up a big win there. They didn't cover. This game opened up around 4.5. Obviously, they won by 4, so even the opening number didn't cover. It did get pushed all the way up to 6.5, so some money did lose there, unfortunately for folks. Western Illinois loses to Illinois. Illinois is 2-0. Who would have ever thought that Lovie Smith would have had a 2-0? I don't care who they're playing against. This is I really don't think that's the guy for that job, but he's got them 2-0 so far, 34-14. And Minnesota was a pick'em at home against Fresno State. It was a very good football game for a long time, and they actually get the win 21-14. So a good football game there, a good win for PJ Fleck. Fresno State has always been, even way back 15, 20 years ago, they come up with that. We'll play anybody, anywhere, anytime. And that's the way they build their program, and they still live off of that. So a big win for PJ Fleck there. And then we'll go into the Big 12. TCU back on Friday night took care of business 42-12. That game was in a lightning delay for a long, long time, and they finally got to play it. And after the first quarter, TCU was down 9-0. They come back after that, just took care of business, scored 42, and win that game 42-12. We talked about UCLA, Oklahoma. West Virginia yesterday plays Youngstown State. Now, don't forget, Youngstown State is where Bo Pelini is at. Now, that team, Youngstown State last year, did make it all the way to the semifinals of the FCS level, so they're not a bad team. West Virginia took care of business, though, yesterday, 52-17. Kansas State, Mississippi State, we talked about that in the SEC. Kansas, yesterday, we mentioned that earlier. Kansas gets a big win, 31-7 over Central Michigan. You know, that's a big deal for them. Hopefully that'll get them some momentum, get them going a little bit. They should not have lost last week to Nicholls State, but Nicholls State's not a terrible team, but it just, that was not, they were not prepared for that game at all. I think that they really do have a little bit more talent than what they've shown. I think they're going to play teams closer this year than what we expect. I don't necessarily think they'll have wins. I don't think they're going to do any better than what they have the last few years. But if you break down stats from year to year, I think this year Kansas will actually put up better numbers than what they have, which, take that for what it's worth. I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, don't expect them to be losing by 70 every week. They may hold some of these games a little bit closer and may stay inside the number a few more times than what they have in the past. Lamar goes to Texas Tech. Texas Tech took care of business easily, 77-0 win for Texas Tech there. Don't know really a lot about Lamar. We talked about Iowa State, Iowa. Baylor 2-0 so far. They get a win against UTSA. 37-20. Oklahoma State gets a win against South Alabama, 55-13. This game, they actually played a home and home with the South Alabama last year. They traveled to USA and took care of business both years. 55-13, Oklahoma State win. Texas bounces back. Now this game, they were a 23-point favorite in this game against Tulsa. They did win the game 28-21, but they did not cover. So Texas is 0-2 against the number this year. Keep that in mind. You know, as they at least got their win, they got a little bit of a bounce back. They've got a lot of room to grow. And that covers the the Big 12. The last conference before we go into games for next week is the ACC. Clemson did get the win 28-26 over A&M. Virginia Tech come out strong again with a win over William & Mary, FCS team. They should be winning those games, but that is a big deal to score 62 points against them. Penn State did beat Pitt 51-6. Miami wins big against Savannah State. Miami was like a 60-point favorite in this game. Ridiculous that Savannah State is being scheduled for these games. I believe it was 3 or 4 years ago, Savannah State played Florida State, and they were like an 82-point underdog, and Florida State wins that game 83-0. I mean, that's just ridiculous, scoring that kind of points against the team. I know those checks are good, but that's embarrassing for your program. Talked about Duke and Northwestern. Georgia Tech goes to South Florida yesterday and loses that game, 49-38. You know, Georgia Tech jumped out quick. They scored a lot of points. Both teams did in the first half, really in the first quarter. And then the second half, South Florida took care of business, putting up 21 in the fourth quarter alone to win that game, 49-38. Georgia Tech was favored in this game by around a field goal, around 3.5 to 3, something of that nature, and did lose. Wake Forest gets a 51-20 victory over Townsend. Now, Wake took Tulane last week to overtime to get that victory. They are 2-0, but, you know, I still don't think they're that great right now. They've got a lot of room to improve. North Carolina State takes care of business 41-7 against Georgia State. This game was 7-3 Georgia State with like 3 minutes left in the first quarter. Obviously, NC State woke up at that point, took care of business 41-7. Boston College, as you guys know if you watched my preseason videos, I'm high on Boston College. I've actually got them finishing second in that division, and behind Clemson, and they took care of business yesterday against Holy Cross. Nothing big there, but 62-14, they're 2-0, moving into conference next week against Wake Forest. North Carolina, not a lot here, man. I know we talked about for the season, they just don't have the talent. I honestly don't think Fedora makes it past this season. I've said that since summer. They lose to East Carolina, 41-19. East Carolina lost to an FCS team last week, so this is a terrible loss for North Carolina. They really, in my opinion, took a step back even from week 1. Syracuse gets a win 62-10 against Wagner. Don't know anything about Wagner. Louisville wins 31-7 against Indiana State. Now, I do know that Indiana State is a decent FCS team. They have been to the playoffs the last few years. It's not a terrible team there, but Louisville gets the win 31-7. We've talked about Indiana and Virginia. The big one here, Florida State and Samford. Florida State barely gets out of here, in my opinion. I know they won by 10. They had to score 15 in the fourth quarter to win this game. Halfway through the fourth, they're down 26-23, I believe, to Samford. That's unacceptable. We'll see what happens there. That is it as far as covering this week. As far as me, I did go 1-2 again. I've had a struggle the first 2 weeks of the year. Really felt like each of the first 2 weeks I had an over, and both of those overs felt like I was going to have them cashed. Really good going in the second half. Did not happen. They come up short for me both weeks. Hoping to bounce back from those. In my projections, and you guys know that this is more of a a vlog, and I'm not a professional at this. I do this as a hobby. It's a lot of fun to me. I enjoy it, but everything's always adapting. And one thing is, last week I adjusted my points per stats up 5 yards. This week I'm going to do the same. I'm still putting out a lot of overs. When I project these, it's still putting up a lot of points. Well, obviously those are not coming in, so therefore I've adjusted them another 5 yards each on rushing and passing. So now I'm up to like 80 yards rushing for a touchdown, things like that. Trying to see how these stats correlate to points. Did hit the money line play there, the little degenerate play that we give out every week, and so we're 1-1 there. It was plus 205, so we made everything back from last week on those plays. Plus, we're up on those. That's pretty neat. We'll see how we keep going with that. Won the Mississippi State game, minus 9.5. Lost the Ohio State over. And then completely missed on the Florida game. There's no excuse there at all. I just missed that game. Justin, like I said, let's go into as far as next week real quick before we wrap this video up. There's 5 games that I think are going to be good games to watch. Bama, Ole Miss. I don't know what's going to happen there. I know Ole Miss had struggled first half against like Southern Illinois, but that's obviously an overlooked spot there. They're overlooking that team towards Alabama. Start off the conference games this week. So Alabama, yesterday had a big win. They've still got some room to improve. See what happens there. LSU Auburn should be a really good game. Auburn obviously looking stout. LSU looking stronger than what I had thought, what other people had thought. USC Texas, this may not be a great football game as far as X's and O's. I think this is going to be a good game, a close game. 2 powerful traditional, programs. Playing this game should be a lot of fun. Ohio State TCU, that's where game day will be next week in Dallas at Jerry's World, so we'll see how that goes. And then West Virginia and North Carolina State, that's a really good out-of-conference game in my opinion. That should be a really good game to watch. The rest of the Power 5 versus Power 5 next week, there's 9 total. Missouri-Purdue, that's a revenge game for Missouri from last year. Vandy versus Notre Dame. Washington versus Utah. Rutgers versus Kansas. Duke versus Baylor. Oklahoma versus Iowa State. Boston College versus Wake Forest. Florida State versus Syracuse. And Georgia Tech versus Pitt. So that is There's 14 total, Power 5 versus Power 5. I'll take all 14 of those. I'm projecting them, seeing where I'm coming out. Of course, Wednesday we'll have another handicapping video for week 3 coming up. That's all I have. Please give it that thumbs up. I really appreciate you all watching this video. I know it's a long one. We're pushing on 40 minutes. I love doing these. It's a good way to go through all the games, look at everything. Helps me prepare for the week. Hopefully you get something out of it, anything. And if you're watching any of the NFL stuff today, good luck. If you're looking at taking any games, good luck. You know, I'm only focusing on college now. I'm not trying to do any NFL. But if you are, I wish you the best. Let me know how you do. Appreciate you, and I will see you Wednesday. Thanks.